Unfiltered, uncensored, unprecedented TV. Hello and welcome to The Leading Edge with me, Basil Valentine. Today is Thursday, the 21st of August. And, the world situation, is it getting any better? It can't get worse than Donald Trump referring to Benjamin Netanyahu as a war hero. What an absolutely extraordinary thing to say. The world has been completely turned on its head. I think homicidal psychopath, criminal, far better words to describe him. I mean, we really are seeing a huge chasm in interpretations of events in the Middle East in particular, with ever stronger language used by those of us who believe we are witnessing a genocide, a Holocaust even, and we are backed up by the experts, whether it's the Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention, B'Tselem, the Israeli human rights organization, the Israeli Physicians for Humanity group, Amnesty International, dozens of others, various scholars, Ori Goldberg, Israeli professor of genocide studies. So on the other hand, you've got people saying, no, there's no genocide. And then thirdly, of course, you've got to look at what's actually happening on the ground. I played the clip earlier this week of a little girl aged about 10 murdered in a drone strike as she struggled to get some water for herself and a few remaining members of her families. The images that come out of Gaza, particularly if you go to Instagram, are too horrific to show on a channel like this. Would probably get banned. I mean, really grotesque, gory, utterly inhumane stuff of a particularly sadistic variety, might I say, with dozens of people murdered as they have been day after day after day. And Israeli ministers like Basil saying that they wish to destroy all semblance of the means to support life in Gaza. That's textbook genocide, simple as that. And we now have a new category of Holocaust deniers, amongst them the law firm, accountants I should say, who were working for Paul Weller, yes, the famous songwriter and guitarist of the Jam and the Style Council. And to get through these issues, and indeed most particularly his own interactions with law enforcement, both for proclaiming support for a now proscribed organization, I think we know who we mean, and also for some seeming irregularities in the general election there in Rochdale, where George Galloway was defending the seat he'd won a few months previously in a by-election. Joining me to discuss all these things is Hoz Hussein Shafei, the elections coordinator for the Workers' Party. Thank you for joining me today on Unprecedented TV, Hoz.
It's my pleasure.
So first of all, let's go all the way back to July 2024. I, for one, was very surprised that Rishi Sunak decided to effectively sacrifice the vast majority of Conservative MPs in a snap general election that he stood no chance of winning. Turkeys don't normally vote for Christmas. And that election caught your party, I should say the Workers' Party, of course, your party means something else now, rather caught you on the hop. I know you've been planning on fielding 300 candidates and had a real nationwide campaign plan. And things were very much truncated with local parties unable to, get as well organized, should we say, as they might have been with a longer lead-in. We were all expecting an autumn general election. I mean, I would even speculate that part of Rishi Sunak's reasoning for calling the snap election was to to wrong foot the Workers' Party, as well as various independents who were beginning to get organised. We'll get into the high weeds of what went on that night in July in Rochdale in a moment. But first of all, are you suspicious at all of the timing of last year's general election and indeed its outcome?
To be honest with you, the way things were going with him, he was becoming so unpopular. And the speech that he made after George had won the seat was unprecedented. It was the first time that I can happily say that I've ever heard in my life where the people of a constituency picked a MP where they were told, you've made a mistake in doing that. And then that George's first words as the MP was to say that this is for Gaza. And I think they didn't want anyone who was standing up there and winning elections, organizing themselves to have even more MPs that are happy to stand up and say this is for Gaza. And they had to do something because we were at the time, because George had won and George got into Parliament and George was skewering the Prime Minister and was skewering the ministers. And every time George got up and spoke and opened his mouth up about any question that he did, they were left speechless. They were left hung, drawn, and quartered. They didn't have an answer. And the oddest thing is this: no one looks at the stuff that happens on Parliament TV, but every time George spoke up in Parliament, the recordings of his questions would run times 10 times anybody else talking. So that's the kind of attraction that he had. And he'd suddenly become, out of a backbench position of only just winning an election, another voice that was completely critical of the establishment, whether it's Tory or Labour. It doesn't make any difference. He's an anti-establishment MP. And they didn't like it. They didn't like him doing as well as he was in Parliament, and any way that you can to dismantle it. They know what they're doing, and they did what they had to do, which is call an election early to stop us organising ourselves into a bigger factional thing. And then as it was, we ended up being the 6th largest voting party in the country. And it's the first time any party that is socialist, that is a declared socialist party, has had that many votes. The only people that came close were the Communist Party after the war in Coventry, where they had about 110,000 votes. And we, as a socialist party, we ended up with 210,000 votes. So what can I tell you?
That was in, what was it, roughly 100 constituencies contested, Oz?
We had 152 constituencies, but a lot of them ended up being paper candidates, if nothing else. I mean, for instance, my one was a paper candidate because the City of Westminster, City of London, Westminster, I stood for that, but I didn't publish a single, leaflet. I wasn't able to do anything in the constituency I was going for, but we weren't going to leave that seat empty because that is, that is a City of London and Westminster, which is the heart of where Parliament is. So I ended up putting my name forward, and as it so happens, I ended up getting 700 odd votes, which was, without a single thing being done, which means there was a lot of people that that the Workers' Party and the name of George Galloway resonated with. And, and that's an important factor. And the more time we were given, the more traction we'd have had. And, I personally went above and beyond to help the independents as well. But we'll talk about that if you want to, that stood up for the election at that time. So.
Yes, 700 people, enough to fill a large hall and make a lot of noise. There's no doubt about it. And of course, if you extrapolate the total number of votes the Workers' Party received, you contested less than a quarter of the available 650 seats. So if you multiply your vote by 4, you get what? So 500,000 or so.
We'd have easily got more if we ended up with 300 seats or 500 seats that we were going for. We weren't going to stand in Scotland. We were never going to stand in Northern Ireland. We had one person that stood in Wales, but we're mostly an English party and an English based party. We've never wanted to tread on the toes of other socialists that are doing work in those countries. And, Scotland has got the SNP, which are very left leaning. We don't agree on everything they do, but again, it's not something we were interested in. The elections, the general election for us was about giving it to the establishment party. And Scotland was not an establishment area. It was about giving it to the Labour Party and giving it to the Tory Party, because they are the people that have ruled this country since Margaret Thatcher won her election. And there's been no difference for the poorest people in our society since that time till today. Everything has remained the same. They are the rich man's party. They're not a socialist party. They could not care less about how the poorest people in our society try and thrive and survive. And if nothing else, we are a full-on imperial party that likes to project our menace wherever we can. And this is since the new millennia. We're 25 years past 2000, and we've had millions of people displaced because of the wars that we've inflicted on their countries, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Syria, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's the Yemen, where it's Libya, call it what you will. And it's just like a pattern of chaos that we are second whistle to America and Israel in destruction that just is never ending. And the only person that could have stopped anything was Jeremy Corbyn, and then he was stopped by the anti-Semitism. I can't say it, you know what I mean?
Well, I say farrago or smear. I don't have any hesitation saying that. And it's worth pointing out, because we can come on to this later, that Jeremy is actually a Zionist in as much as he believes in Israel's right to exist. I think if you pressed him now, he would still parrot out something about the two-state solution. We will come back to that topic. But first of all, let's have a look at the events. You shared some media with me, Hoz, taken on the night of July the 6th, was it 7th, last year, the night of the
4th of July.
4th of July it was, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Who can forget Independence Day in the United States? That Britain gained its independence. I think you're absolutely right about the election of the Thatcher government in 1979 being, the moment that we turned from the social contract to one of neoliberalism and neoconservatism, where greed was suddenly exalted somehow as the highest human virtue. Everything was being sold off. The British public swindled out of their national assets. Some commentators still like to deride the 1970s as an era of chaos. But when you could get a full grant to go to university and didn't have to pay any tuition fees, as if that was such a terrible thing. And of course, we weren't at war. Anyway, I'm going to put up these pictures you sent me, and please explain what's going on here, because I believe you believe that.
Let me set the stage for you, if I may.
Yes, of course.
Me set the stage. So I was part of the team that was with the George's agent at the Rochdale, and I was there from the start of the counting. And they started the count at about whatever it was, 10 o'clock onwards, 10:30 onwards. The postal vote is not supposed to be counted, or sorry, the vote can't start without the postal vote being brought in and made a part of the actual count.
So just to clarify, to clarify, so that all the votes are in the room at the same time before the voting starts, before the counting starts. So every single vote that was cast is in the room. You lock the doors and then you count the votes.
Absolutely. So that is the law. So because what happens is the council has a place, which is a room effectively, where people can come and cast their postal vote because they were unable to get it in on the day or send it by mail. And they can't take their postal vote to a counting centre and say, this is my postal vote. They tell them, you've got to take this to the council. There's a room there that you can post it there. Now, I was there and I asked one of my staff, I said, do me a favor, can you please go and check how many bundles, and it's these round bundles of votes of 50 to 100 100 votes, paper ballots. I want you to go around the desk and count how many there are in for George's bundle, how many is for Paul War. And one of my staff went and counted around the table. He said, Hoz, we've got 122 for us. I've gone, excellent. Now go and count how many Paul War's got. He's gone and counted it. He said he's got 122 as well. So Paul War had the same number of circular bundles of 100 votes. Okay. Now, not every table will have 100 votes, because what they do is they allocate 100 per thing. And so one or two of them may have 50 or 60 or 70. So one of 100. And there was 9 tables. So there's the opportunity to be the difference of a maximum of 900 votes difference. Okay. Maximum. My staff did their counting, and the counting that we ended up with was 122 for Paul War, 122 for George. Then, if you want to play the video that shows 2 people going into the counting center, I'll explain that. Where 2 people going in.
I've got that lined up. Let me just check this is the right one. I believe this is the clip you mean.
Yep.
Got it on video, yeah?
Yeah, on video now. How long these guys been up?
I'll tell him tales like, yeah?
Yeah. Let me ring him, Chad. I'll ring you back.
All right.
Yes, you're muted. You're muted while the videos play. While the video plays, Hoz. So
sorry.
All right.
I'll say it again then. So if you may have noticed there's 2 ballot boxes in their hands. Why are they at 12:18 in the evening on the evening when the count has already started at 10 o'clock or 10:15, 10:20? Are they bringing in 2 boxes?
So I'm going to play it. I'm going to play it again, Hoz, just so we can see that.
Okay.
Got it on video, yeah?
Yeah, on video now. How long these guys been up?
I'll tell him tales like, yeah?
Yeah. Let me ring him, Chad. I'll ring you back.
All right.
Yeah, so you can see the boxes there clearly. And dare I say it, they look rather, they're moving very briskly, Hoz, and they look rather like scallywag figures. There's something rather furtive about the way they're moving.
I mean, the thing that worried, one of the things that I noticed was he kept looking to his right and kept looking to his left, and he's walking in with these boxes. And what people don't understand is every single box that arrives there has to arrive and has to be signed off by every single agent. And every single one of them came through a specific door. These 2 boxes were walked in and marched in through the front door of the counting center. No one got a chance to check them. And they were brought into the middle of the counting area and deposited on the ground by the foot of an elderly woman. And our agents turned around and said, "What are these boxes?" And the CEO of the council turns around, and he's the returning officer. He goes, "Oh, they're just what's it called? Some answer." But the answer was not very clear as to why they're walking in 2 new boxes into the middle of the counting area once it's already started. We didn't get an answer for that.
No, I mean, those boxes then surely should have been isolated and their contents examined separately, because if indeed, as no doubt you suspect, there was ballot stuffing going on, and 90 or even 100% of those boxes were votes for George's opponent, then it would have been clear at that point that there was some monkey business going on.
This is the thing here. George ended up losing to Paul War by nearly 1,100 odd votes. Those boxes can carry that amount of paperwork, maybe double that. But isn't it strange that 122 rolls is what I counted, or one of my staff counted, for Paul War and for George? And that is, and I have walked out of the counting station around that time, and yet these guys end up winning by about 10%, but over 1,000 odd votes. And those boxes are brought in at 12:18. Why are those boxes brought in? I'm still waiting to see what the police have got to say about it. The police have turned around and said, the GMP, which is the Greater Manchester Police, have said nothing. They've turned around and said that there's nothing to answer for. We've made a complaint, an official complaint to the police to investigate it. Fraud, nothing. And the problem we've got is, if we, as the Workers' Party of Britain, actually went to the Electoral Commission, and tried to get the case of this brought up at the Electoral Commission, we would have got bankrupted should we have lost as a party. The responsibility would be on whoever won or lost to pay the costs. And the costs for someone like us is maybe £250,000 to have this at the Electoral Commission, which would have bankrupted our party. And we decided not to do that and decided to do through the route of the police instead. What we didn't realize was that the police are part of the problem, in my opinion, because they've not replied to anything we've sent. We've given them signed off statements. We have sent all of these to them, and they've replied with, "We're not doing anything. We're not investigating." Why are you not telling George Galloway? Why are you not telling his agent? They're completely ignoring us and not giving us a reply to any of our questions about what have you done with this investigation. It's a stitch up. And George at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, when we were still up looking and counting everywhere, turned around and said, "You know what? I didn't think after 50 years of being in a country like Britain that I can turn around and happily say that our democracy is also fixed." And that's a fact.
I know, of course, the once every 5 years plebiscite is held up by authoritarians like Starmer as the shining example of why Britain is a democracy. As far as I'm concerned, I'm sure you agree, Hoz, there's far more to democracy than simply putting one X in a box every 5 years. That cannot be considered to constitute the totality of democracy. There has to be more to it than that. And so the fact that the Electoral Commission itself is so opaque, really, and as you say, such a ridiculously expensive business. Obviously, one wouldn't want frivolous challenges to election results that simply waste everybody's time and I would say resources. I don't think even with something as important like that, the pounds and the pennies are relevant. It should be, an absolute gold standard. The most important thing is election integrity. It's come to the fore in the United States in recent years, but we've always liked to think in Britain that we have 100% integrated election, fair and free elections. Though, having said that, I'm reminded of one or two other slightly suspicious elections and goings on in our body politic. Some people are rather curious about the result of the 1970 general election that saw the end of that Harold Wilson government, and indeed also possibly Neil Kinnock's defeat in 1992. Not that I'm a Kinnock fan, but anyway, you go on, Hoz.
I just want to say that another one of my candidates, Amrit Maan in Heston, the ballot boxes ended up going somewhere other than the counting centre before they were brought to the counting centre. Why would you do that? Why would you take all the boxes to another place and then bring them over to the counting centre? And that's another fact that's happened. And my candidate had thousands upon thousands of votes and ended up with 2,000 only. And the man is a deputy mayor of the council that he was on. He was a former Labour councillor, but he ended up becoming coming to us, Amrit. And it doesn't reflect anywhere the kind of numbers he should have been given. And he was shocked as I was. And then when I heard about how these boxes are disappearing somewhere and then appearing somewhere else, it's just travesty. It's not a democracy when you have to steal the vote. And most of these councils are made up of either Labour or Tory, and they're the ones that run the election. These elections should not be run by Labour Party people or Conservative people. They should be run by independent organisations that are not politically aligned to either party. And it needs to be looked into. How can we make it bulletproof so we don't end up Labour councillors who are employing Labour members of staff to do these jobs, to make sure that we don't end up in a position where the integrity of our elections is brought into question. and it is brought into question. It's 100, in my opinion, it's the first time I've been involved in this kind of in general election, because before this day I was a company director for companies in Qatar and over here in Britain. I've never been involved in politics. I've only joined the body politics because of Gaza in 23 and 24, and I went to see George because Jeremy hadn't organized a party, and because Jeremy Corbyn didn't organize a party, I ended up going to someone who did have a party, which is George Galloway and Chris Williamson, and I joined them. So, you know, my first time seeing this, I'm like, I'm a great believer in democracy, but now I know that the system is corrupt. I have no doubt that it's corrupt because I've seen it and experienced it in the first person. How can 122 rolls of votes suddenly become an extra 10, 12 extra rolls for one person, and the voting and the counting is nearly all finished? It doesn't make sense to me.
We've got some footage that you shared here of the count in Rochdale that night, Hoz. She's on her phone.
Go back and stop there for a second.
Right. I can't pause it, I'm afraid, but do go on.
Right. Okay. So what I'll say to you is there's a woman there, and at her feet are two boxes, right? Those two boxes are at her feet. That woman is we could not identify who she is.
Right.
We asked who she was. They said they don't know who she is. However, she, in another video, you can see her, is walking out of the counting center with the same person that's got the cream jacket on. And now what he's wearing is the backpack that the other person that walked in with him that was carrying the two boxes. So the two boxes were brought in by two people. The guy with the beige jacket is seen in another video with that woman not walking out, going out as fast as they can to get out of there with the backpack on. And we could not get the council to identify who that woman was. That guy is a member of staff that works at the council and is part of the counting team, part of the people that do the elections. But the woman, no one is allowed to go inside the square of the counting area of the tables other than people who are known to them. The council could not tell us who she was. Who was she? To this day, we don't know who she is.
We've got one more clip, Hoz. I'm going to play it. Just wait to the end before making a comment, if you can.
Certainly, sorry. I mean, that's just the car that brought the ballot boxes in, and the reason we took that is to show the number plate and to show the timestamp of when it arrived and when it left. That's it.
Right. I quite understand. And the police are not interested in any of this evidence.
The police have refused to speak to us because the investigation that was done by a person who is no longer a member of our party and fell out with us. And he's decided that he's not going to follow up the investigation. And he was the point man for us with the Greater Manchester Police. And the Greater Manchester Police have decided that they're going to ignore George Galloway, who is the victim in this crime, and will not reply to him.
Right. It sounds absolutely typical, if I may say so. You said it's appalling. You said, Hoz, that you only became involved in politics after the slaughter in Gaza began. And at that time, of course, Jeremy Corbyn had not indeed started a new party. But since then, having banded together both with the independents elected in July last year, I mean, they couldn't rig all those elections as well. Plus, of course, now Zara Sultana, they do have a new party, your party for the time being. I wonder, do you think it's Corbyn's own personal celebrity that has resulted in them attracting 750,000 supporters in the first couple of weeks before a single policy has been announced? Personally, I think Sultana is the more attractive prospective leader. I think she's got more going for her. Jeremy was weak when leader of the Labour Party. he refused to counterattack and endlessly gave ground when colleague after colleague was thrown under the bus. And indeed, Jeremy was often driving the bus that ran them over, quite simply. He never pushed back against the smears against him to any meaningful degree. I'm afraid the same thing is going to happen again. There's 2 or 3 questions rolled into one there, Hoz, but take them in any order you like.
So what I'll say to you is, without Jeremy Corbyn, there wouldn't be 700,000 people or 750,000 people signing up. If Zara Sultana went out there on her own and said, I'm starting up a party, she would not get anywhere near that kind of traction. There is a magic to Jeremy Corbyn, and that magic was in 2015 when he, out of nowhere, was asked to put himself in the race for the leadership of the Labour Party. And the Labour Party and the members of the Labour Party jumped on the fact that they wanted something different to the neoliberal leadership that the Labour Party has had. And he won by a massive majority. He destroyed all the other candidates, and it was a resounding victory for Jeremy in the Labour Party. Okay. Then what translated was that the things that he spoke about were common sense, easy to understand policies. Okay. And the most important thing that you need to understand is Jeremy Corbyn was asked a very simple question by the Israeli handlers of the establishment of this country. And they said to him, what will you do? Will you give full access and rights to Israel to do whatever it wants to do? Now, he is repeated, and I'm not saying anything that he hasn't said himself, to a Navarro media interview or with Owen Jones or someone else. And he was told, if you do that, we don't have a problem. And Jeremy said, there is no way that I can agree that I'm just going to give Israel the opportunity to pass whatever it wants to do. And that is when the screws got turned on Jeremy. Now, I am not, one of the things that pissed me off about everything was that Jeremy kept apologizing for anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. The fact that it was created by people in the Labour Party themselves, the fact that it was people like Hodgson calling him an anti-Semite, and nonsense anti-Semite crap that was, sorry about swearing, that was being said against him. His thing is, he was like just trying to be peaceful. He made a mistake. He should have come out and said, you know what? I've had enough. But he is a person that is conciliatory towards other people, and he's hoping it would blow away. He made a mistake. He made a mistake to say, you know, I'm sorry so many times. He should have just said, look, I've said I'm sorry once. I've said it twice. I've said it 3 times. I'm no longer going to be apologizing for things that I haven't personally done. And then what you've got to realize is it was a full-on smear campaign that was being run by the media barons, by the British state. And when you've got British Army squaddies taking your picture, hanging it up in a range and shooting it, putting bullets in the head of Jeremy Corbyn's picture, put yourself in the shoes of Jeremy Corbyn. That's the British military telling you, you're not welcome to become the Prime Minister of our country. I don't want to put myself in the shoes of someone that's going through that, where I'm getting hounded by my own, party members who are resigning on cue every 10 minutes to destabilize my leadership. The fact that Gary Murphy and the rest of the team and everyone else were able to survive as long as they did was actually an achievement in itself. And I think people need to understand that Jeremy is the only person that could potentially lead this party until such time as someone like Zara Sultana or someone else can come along, because those people don't have the pull that Jeremy has across the country. And that is the reality. If we want to see a left-leaning socialist alternative to the right wing, and the right wing is now made up of Labour, Conservative and Reform, all 3, yeah, then we need to be able to turn around and offer a real opportunity for people to turn around and say, well, I can have faith in what the alternative is. And I don't think Zara on her own is enough at the moment. She doesn't have the standing. And believe me, the fact that she stood up and said, I am anti-Zionist, boy, that made me happy. I want Jeremy to do the same. Jeremy needs to do the same thing and say, I am anti-Zionist, because I promise you the 750,000 people that are following him right now, that would be music to their ears. It's not going to be music to some of the people around Jeremy who are trying to work with the system. But we need to break from the system, and we need to be different to what the other ones are, because Reform is Israeli supported, so is Labour, and so is Conservative. You need, the distinction now has to be between the political parties is, are you an Israeli party or are you an against Israeli party? If you're part of the Israeli party and trying to be supportive of their ideals, you're not going to win the next election with the people that are going to walk out onto the street for you, because all of them have seen Israel do what it does over the last 2 years nearly. And almost all of these people are the kind of people that are out on the street going, you need to stop the genocide. Bring the people with you, and then you can go forward with all of them.
Yeah, I mean, Zara's statement that she's anti-Zionist really does break new ground for someone who's now a major political figure in the United Kingdom. She was derided as an anti-Semite by Oliver Cam. I don't know if you saw that earlier this week. She then threatened legal action for defamation. And he has withdrawn the tweet, which is unusual. There we are. Times columnist Oliver Cam defended Zara Sultana as an anti-Semite. She threatened to sue, and today he's backed down by looking at his account. Well, since then, he's actually published an official apology and offered to make a donation, I think it is, to medical aid for Palestinians, Hoz. What can you say about that? I say it's unprecedented because, the only sort of avowed anti-Zionists prior to October the 6th were people like Professor David Miller. And of course, he won his unfair dismissal case against Bristol University on the grounds that anti-Zionism is a protected belief. It's a valid position in a democracy. Now, I think after October the 6th, October the 7th, the last 2 years, you can double down on that. I mean, anti-Zionism simply means that you do not believe that the Israeli regime as presently constituted is entitled to continue. There's lots of talk at the moment about demilitarizing Gaza and Hamas not being permitted any role in the future of Gaza. That's assuming, of course, that it isn't completely ethnically cleansed, and that's well underway, as we know. But I think the bigger question, again, I've put 2 or 3 points to you together, all wrapped up in a bundle, Hoz, is given the consensus amongst human rights organizations and indeed legal scholars that Israel is committing genocide, then why should the Israeli government be permitted to continue? So that's the anti-Zionist position, basically saying you cannot leave a genocidal regime in place.
I 100% agree with you. I think the fact that Israel has been able to get away with what it's been able to get away is the reason why people need to get together and give an alternative to Reform, Conservative and Labour, because all three of those parties are fully in support of the genocide that's taking place. Platitudes are given once in a while and say, we're concerned about what Israel is doing. Your words, your concern mean nothing to the kid that was trying to carry water for her family getting droned to death. Your concern does not stop the fact that food is being used as a weapon of war to draw people in and for them to kill people. Those parties all believe in that. Now, Jeremy, Zara, Richard Burgon, John McDonnell, there are MPs in Parliament, plus obviously the 4 independents.
And some Scottish nationalists and...
Yeah, there are other parties that are anti this. But the important thing is, we've got a future of Reform becoming a government, and we've got the Labour in power, and we have the Conservatives in power at the beginning of this conflict. And all three of them have done nothing but support the right of Israel to murder people left, right, and centre without any recourse to international laws, without any kind of international norms being brought in. I'd like you to imagine, if you will, if the tables were reversed and it was the other way around. If it was Palestinians that were bombing Jews, bombing Israelis every single day, killing 100,000 people, the world would be sending tanks, weapons, everything to stop them. But why is Israel allowed to do this? How is it possible that they're allowed to do this? David Miller and every other person has an absolute right to say, dismantle the state of Israel, because the state of Israel today is a genocidal state. I am in full support of having the whole of Israel, the whole of their military taken to pieces and smashed to pieces so they can't keep killing. I don't want to see Israel completely destroyed. I want people to be able to live with each other and in peace with each other. What I'd like to see is a one-state solution where you get to vote who are your leaders and get on with each other. Because really, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. These borders have been put in place by people who, in my opinion, have wanted to see humanity divided, that want to see a division between common cousins. Every single person on this planet Earth is the child of mitochondrial Eve. There is no difference genetically between us and Chinese, Alaskans. We're like 99.9% all genetically the same. But yet what we have is a global power, and that is the global power of the rich, that want to see everyone at each other's throats. Now, they can use the skin color, they can use your religion, they can use a line that they've drawn in the sand. They want to find ways to divide and conquer humanity, because when we are fighting each other, because when you've got a right-wing racist saying X, Y, and Z against a left-leaning person, you're not looking at who's created this environment. Did you know, for instance, that BlackRock is the company that is taking the boats that are being used to transfer people from France to Britain? There's a company, a BlackRock company, that's taking those boats back to France. Why is BlackRock taking the boats that should be knifed and smashed to pieces and destroyed, that completed and finished the trip to bring those people over here, are then sent by trucks to back to France? It's maddening to see how we are being played against each other as human beings. And it's a stain on people if they stay silent and if they choose to do nothing. And yes, Israel must be dismantled, not because I want to see Israel destroyed. It's I want them to stop killing people. I want them to stop killing people in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Syria, in Gaza, in the West Bank. The West Bank, Jenin has just been told that Jenin is a refugee camp with 40,000 people in it, yeah? The people have been kicked out of that area, and now they're saying they're going to change the zoning from refugee camp to a neighborhood. Now, if it changes from refugee camp to neighborhood, it means that 50% of that area can then become, guess what? Populated by Israelis. At which point, what did they do to other West Bank cities? They created these checkpoints and stopped them coming in, just like they did in what's it called? I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the place, but it's called Khalil.
You can take a pick from any number. You know the archipelago.
Do you see what I'm saying to you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the situation in the West Bank is worse than ever. Simple as that. They're creating a series of micro concentration camps in which Palestinians are confined, and yet we still have these platitudes coming out of the likes of Macron and Starmer about the two-state solution. You know, not quite sure where the Palestinian state is supposed to exist. But I just want to go back to the question of the political parties quickly, Oz. And a tweet put out by Zara today. There it is. 1 in 5 Britons would continue voting for the new left-wing party, rising to 1 in 3 young people and Labour voters. I think that might actually underestimate the count. I think once people get a chance to see what's on offer, policies like renationalisation, first of all, of water and why not electricity and railways as well, are extremely popular we've been, not only have we been ripped off financially, but also the privatized water companies dumping sewage in rivers and beaches. It ought to be a much, much bigger scandal than it is. The reason why it's not a bigger scandal is because, of course, the corporate media is every bit as neoliberal as the two parties that have connived to swindle the British people out of their national assets, Oz.
I 100% agree with every single word you've said, but I think the more important thing than all of just policies and everything else is that Zara and Jeremy and their teams have to come together, and they have to find a united front to put out there, because if we have two groups of people that are not able to work together from now, the beginning, it's not a good look. As I said, people need to have trust and faith in this organization. This left leading, trying to lead the left of the country. The important thing is there is so much that people agree on that needs to get changed. And nationalization is one of those things. That the things that are important need to be the things that bring us together. The things that divide us need to be reduced to nothing, because it's not as important as the big picture. For instance, there are a lot more disabled people in this country of ours than there are people who are suffering the consequences or the inadequacies of the state dealing with trans rights. Okay? The disabled are people who need a lot more help than people who are trans. But we're caught up in a situation where people are fighting each other over matters which are for a small part of society in comparison to the larger part. And people are fighting each other instead of going, you know what, let's just forget about it and put it to one side, because it's more important that we actually get into power and win. And that number of a third, it's nothing in comparison to Middle England turning around and saying, do you know what, I don't like the direction that my country's going in. I'm going to give these guys a chance. But they're not going to come to us. They're not going to come to the left if they think we can't even govern ourselves and we can't work things out for ourselves. If the left can't have a united front of, we want to do right by British society and we're here to lead it correctly, properly and strongly, then the left will never ever win. And this whole thing is just a LARP at power, a LARP at making a change. And if you're there to LARP instead of do the work, the hard work, you're not going to take people with you. And if you don't take people with you, and we're going to need millions of people to come out onto the streets and help support us and change people's minds up, because me and you are politically on point and we know what's going on. The majority of people in our country, they're out of touch with politics because they've got 3 jobs or 2 jobs, don't have time to get involved in politics, don't have time to do the research and what's right and what's wrong. And all they get fed is what they get fed by the London TV channels, by the BBC, by the ITV. And as far as they're concerned, everything's rosy. The fact that people can't pay their rent, the fact that people, electricity and gas bills have doubled up in the last X number of years, the fact that inflation has gone up by 20% and the cost of living's gone up by 25%, that's never ever going to go down. And the fact that wages have not kept up with that. All of these things are happening to people, but none of these things mean anything to the other side, because their concern is we've got the media behind us and supporting us. And we need to get people to support us. And the only way they're going to do that is if we have a united front and we have a message that's on point and answers everyone's questions. And we need to mobilize the 750,000 into people that believe in the message of the party. And it can't be a cult of personalities. It's got to be, what are the policies that we're going to do here, put in place? And the most important thing for me is that it has to be a democratic system. And that's why I've did a video thing before about direct democracy needs to be a part of the conversation, because we live in a world where my phone is my ID. Trillions of decisions are made by pay app, this, that, and the other, and that is a secure payment system. How is it possible that we can't create the same system electronically for people to get involved in voting, politics, get people involved in it? and don't make it, a 5-year event. Make it an event where I'm involved in the politics of what's happening in my country. And if a law comes in, for instance, like prescription against Palestine Action, if enough people turn around and say, you can't do that, they shouldn't be allowed to do that as our elected representatives, because we know that what they're doing is being done on behalf of Israel. It's not being done to protect the British public from anything. It's being done to allow Israel to continue to do whatever it wants to do. And this is one of those times when the British government has to prove to its masters, the Israeli establishment, that we're on your side. This is what we're willing to do for you. It's not helping the British public. There's no British public under threat from red paint being thrown on an aeroplane that's worth £100 million. It gets wiped off with a bit of water and a sponge. So,
and apparently it was hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of damage that had to be repaired. But
they're lying.
well, I know, but I said apparently. But anybody that conflates criminal damage with terrorism is an idiot. Either that or being willfully sinister, I would say. We touched on so many things there, Hoz, amongst them, as you rightly pointed out. The phone these days is your ID. And in the hands of this increasingly authoritarian government, they'd like to make it your sole passport to goods, services, and indeed interacting with the rest of society via the so-called digital ID. And on that subject, I'm going to play a short clip here of friend Neil Oliver for us to comment on. Here's Neil.
Digital ID isn't about keeping us safe. It's about keeping us where they can see us, where we can't move or do anything without permission in advance. It won't work because it's not built and never was intended to make any of us safe, but on the contrary, to make the oligarchs safe from us.
Very good points there. I can see you nodding along. It really is an unholy alliance, isn't it? This sort of, as I say, surveillance state, authoritarianism, combined with the ever more skewed distribution of wealth in favor of a tiny minority. Then you've got Starmer's insane militarism, promising to spend £10 billion at a time when he's claiming the exchequer is empty, on American weapons to defend Ukrainian borders and ports when he can't even defend Britain's. All the arrows are pointing in the wrong direction, aren't they, Hos?
100% agree with you. And if we, it would be nice to know what we could have done with our money if we hadn't gone and sent it to the Ukraine. And you know what? The best part is this. It's not made a blind bit of difference to what Russia has done. And all you've done is take our tax money, throw it somewhere. And I've heard today that there's been a hack of the military computer systems of the Ukraine by some Russian group. And apparently like 1.7 million Ukrainian men have died.
Yeah,
and
I saw
has
that.
Been done,
I saw that figure. I thought it was absolutely staggering. And others have claimed that 300,000 Russians have died this year alone. But we never seem to see much footage from the front line other than a few damaged buildings in Zaporizhia. That's about the extent of it, isn't it?
And all of this is down to Boris Johnson going down there and telling the Ukrainians, who are about to sign off and agree to everything, don't stop, continue, we will support you. So we've ended up, they stopped operations in Afghanistan and they pivoted the money spending into the Ukraine. What they were spending in what's it called, in Afghanistan, that theater of war was no longer profitable for them. So they had to find a new place where the military industrial complex can enjoy the blood at the altar of war that they want. And they got it in the Ukraine. And 1 million plus people have died on the Ukrainian side. I don't know how many people have died on the Russian side. All I do know is that there was no need for it, because in the end, those borders are going to get redrawn, and there's nothing and no one that's going to stop the Russians from doing what they've got to do, which is, they're a nuclear power. And if NATO wants to attack them, then that's the end of humanity as we know it, and it will be a nuclear winter for the rest of my existence if I'm still alive in central London, which I highly I don't think would exist. I think
Wouldn't
London will be
exist,
one of
would
the
it?
first.
No. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous, the game of chicken that's being played with the country with the largest and most powerful nuclear arsenal in the world. I believe the Russians have.
Correct.
The dreaded Starmer. Just to come back to this country and this creeping authoritarianism, which is a particularly nasty streak in the current Labour government. I mean, personally, I think every streak, every aspect of this government is appalling. But this authoritarianism, which links into what we were saying about digital ID, this report comes from the journalist Jonathan Cook, who writes particularly eloquently about the Middle East. He lived in Israel and the West Bank for a long time, recently returned to live in Bristol. The other day he was pulled over in his car for no reason at all by the police, yet they knew who he was. The police pulled over my car. The lack of reason should worry us all. Many thanks to him. So the story this week is he was approaching a roundabout. Apparently it was a slightly dangerous situation, and blue lights police car started flashing behind him, pulled him over, and then immediately said to him, "Are you Jonathan Cook?" And the reason given was that he was a long way from home. He was visiting family in a different part of the country, but only about 150 miles away from where he lives. I mean, just at the other end of the M4 or something. But they knew who he was, and this was a precaution, supposedly, just sort of checking everything's okay. But this isn't Britain, Hoz. We don't stop people for no reason at all. There's nothing wrong with the car. There was no broken brake light or anything.
They do have a reason, and that reason is to try and scare you and cow you into obedience. Asa Winstanley's a friend of mine. He got arrested by coming through an airport. Richard Medhurst is a friend of mine. He got stopped at an airport. They've had their stuff taken off. And Jonathan Cook is one of the premier people whose writing moves the needle in our society. He is an important figure. And not only is an important figure, he's someone that they're scared of because he makes common sense arguments. And you can't argue against him. You can't argue the points that he's talking about because everything is grounded in common sense, English common sense, that this is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. And they don't want people like him to be able to say those things, be coherent, be someone that's able to pinpoint the finger at everything that's right and wrong. And they don't like it. So what they try and do is do what you've just said. Stop him, arrest him, or wind people up to say, like, we're watching you, mate. You're upsetting the state. And we do live in a police state. Anyone that tells you otherwise, anyone that thinks that we live in a free society over here, when our democracy is once every 5 years, and our democracy is basically a fix up and a fit up. Yeah, these people are working for the establishment. The police are working for the establishment. They don't give a damn about our country. They give a damn about how much control they've got over what's happening in our country. I'd have absolutely zero faith in this British establishment, given a damn about the poorest people in our country. And socialism for me is about caring about everyone. It's about the people who, imagine, if you will, like the American West, and how people used to go in these wagons across the country. Socialists are the kind of people that don't leave the wagons to go on their own or leave the ones that are straggling behind. We take everyone with us. That is what socialism means to me. It's about not leaving people behind. But our country is leaving people behind. British society is leaving people behind. And they're doing it with the help of this government, this establishment, the media barons. And they don't want us all as a nation to be happy with each other in our skin. And they create these problems. And oh my God, do they cause the hatreds.
Finally, Hoz,
country.
the new party, your party, my suggestion for a name would be Evolution. Why not? We can call it what we like. And I think as a society, we need to evolve to a new place if we are to avoid disaster of one sort or another. Do you foresee an electoral pact between the Workers' Party and the new party, whatever it ends up being called?
So the Workers' Party have already said that we are looking to work with your party. We're not looking that we're not going to be fighting them. And I'm sure something will be worked out in the end, but there's a special Congress that's taking place that the Workers' Party have put in place. There is no edict on anyone in our party from being told that you can't join your party. I've signed up, Chris Williamson has signed up, other people have signed up because we're interested in the left. We're interested in socialism. We're interested in the country going in the right direction. And the Workers' Party are literally the best people at working with other people. Just so you know, I stood down candidates against people who were in the collective. I made sure that Liana Mohammed didn't have a candidate against her. The Greens carried on with their candidate. She lost by 600 votes. If the Greens decided not to vote and put a candidate up, we'd have had our first Palestinian MP, and West Streeting would have lost. They had 3,000 odd votes. She lost by 500 or 600. I didn't put a candidate up against Diane Abbott. I didn't put a candidate up against Jeremy Corbyn. I didn't put a candidate up against Shokat. I didn't put up candidates where the independents were being put up, because I wanted us to find like-minded individuals that wanted to do the right thing by the country. We didn't stand up against Pamela Fitzpatrick, Emma Dent-Coe. All of these people are people who we want to succeed as the Workers' Party. The Workers' Party are not some evil demonic thing. We are the people that care about the left. We are the people that would like to see the left win. We would like to see the end of the hegemony of the establishment, whether it's Labour that's in colour today or it's Tory before them. So, I don't know what more I could have done. And also to help, another thing you need to know, we did a study of the talking points and a study that was done by our team, the Workers' Party team, of a 40-page document. And I made sure that Jeremy got a copy. I sent one for him to send to Diane Abbott. I sent it to Pamela Fitzpatrick. These were all the talking points that Labour Together had put together that would be the talking points for them. And Labour Together was the think tank that supported the Labour Party to give them their ideas. And we did our talking points, and our party, with the permission of George Galloway, turned around and said, help them, Hoz. Help these people in any way that you can. And we handed over all of our stuff to every independent so that they had the best possible data points to be able to argue against the Labour Together think tank that had put the work that was needed, or the policies they were putting in place to help those candidates. Now, what they did with them is up to them. But anyone who approached us said, can you not put a candidate up against me? Almost all of them didn't have a candidate up, because in places where we thought we had a better candidate, we're not going to give the seat up. But when it comes to proper names of the left, I didn't put a candidate up against Jeremy. I could never do that. Imagine, God forbid, Jeremy lost by 500 votes and a Workers' Party person got 700 votes. I wouldn't be able to live with myself. In the same way as I wouldn't do it to anyone who I thought was part of the left. I'm not going to, and that is the Workers' Party attitude to everything. We just want to see an end to this Labour Party and the end of this Conservative Party and the future Reform Party. And that's exactly the same alignment that your party's got in place as well. We want the country to be in the hands of people that care about humanity. These guys don't care about anything other than lining up their own pockets. And that's all they are doing for their mates and themselves. All of the, what's it called? Building work, PFI, everything you can think of was done for their mates. COVID was making money for their mates. We don't want that. You know what I want? I want the poorest people in our country to be able to live without the fear of having to turn off their heating, without the fear of, I don't have enough money to pay for my kids' food. That's a good goal. That's a good, noble thing. That's what the Workers' Party want. That's what your party wants. And there is full alignment. between what we want and what they want. We just want a better country for the poorest people and the working class in this country. I don't think there's anything that's wrong or out of alignment between us. You know, we need to be natural allies.
Absolutely. It remains to be seen whether the Greens cooperate electorally. It looks like Zach Polanski, is likely to be elected leader of the Greens. So whether they cooperate with yourselves and the new party remains to be seen. But what we can say is that the old electoral map of the UK has been ripped up. I don't think the voters of what will be 2029 at the next general election, unless we succeed with this petition, currently standing at over 800,000, demanding an immediate general election. Highly unlikely that the government will pay any attention to that. I'm afraid we've got another 4 years of this at least. But I think come 2029, the old traditional voting patterns according to class or demographics, income bracket, I think that's all been torn up these days. But that's a conversation for another day, Hoz. I can't thank you enough for joining me today on The Leading Edge with Basil Valentine here on Unprecedented TV. I do hope you'll be a regular guest from here on. Thank you very much indeed.
It's an absolute pleasure. Nice talking to you again. Speak to you soon.
Talk very soon. I'll be back at the same time tomorrow, and next week, the new show, The Valentine Report, live at 1 o'clock lunchtime UK time, every day next week, Tuesday to Friday is a bank holiday. Bye for now.
Unfiltered, uncensored, unprecedented TV.